Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you for the testimony. Mr. Gerstenmaier, we've all recognized that resources for Orion SLS programs have been constrained, and I think we can acknowledge as well that flat budgets are not optimal for carrying out major development programs like Orion and SLS. But I am impressed with how much progress has been made on these programs given these constraints. And as you know, the committee has had the goal of having SLS and Orion operational at the earliest possible date. You've indicated that, but you've also indicated the slippage based on the budget constraints. We're going to be authorizing NASA again, reauthorizing next year. So I want to understand what the additional progress could be made on the SLS and Orion programs if we were to authorize additional resources. And whether or not the impact on the exploration program, whether there would be any impact if there were inflationary increases as recommended by the National Academy's report of 5% increase, say, and would a sustained increase of this kind of magnitude be sufficient to accelerate the progress that you've described for projected launch dates for EM1 and 2, or would it only be enough to reduce the risk of those dates being pushed even further to the right? I guess I'm just trying to figure out what would get us back to a 2017 target. You seem to indicate that it's not just resources, but you know, even Ms. Chaplain acknowledges that the 2018 dates are at risk as well because of the uncertainty around budget constraints.
Okay, again, I think one thing that could be very helpful to us is get some stability in understanding what the budget is. It's difficult for the programs to plan for potentially what could be a congressional budget versus the administration budget, to get some agreement between the administration and Congress so we know what to plan for in terms of budget would be helpful to us overall, as well as the absolute level. In terms of the technical work, again, I think we've really probably moved off of December 2017 when I look at the work, so I don't think funding will pull us back to that date. I also respectfully have a difference of opinion with GAO. I think it's perfectly fine to complete one of these programs ahead of the others. They don't need to all sync up at exactly the same time. If you think about when you take a vehicle to launch down at the Kennedy Space Center, typically the rocket is ready to go well before the payload is, then the payload comes later. And I think it's actually to our advantage to have some difference in schedules between those. So I think SLS coming first, having the ground systems ready in Florida, and then Orion showing up at the third place is perfectly fine. It's not going to waste resources on if EM1 is complete. If SLS is ready to go fly, we'll be beginning to work on the next core for the second flight of SLS. So that workforce will transition immediately from the EM1 activity to EM2. So there's not a need to have all these programs synced up. So I think we need to be careful and think about that. If we put that extra constraint in where I have to sync all these programs up and match all these schedules, I think that puts another burden in that can make an inefficiency. So again, I think, again, from a technical standpoint, we're probably in 2018 somewhere with SLS in the first part with the funding levels we've seen. We've made the commitment in the KDPC activity to November of 2018. Ground Ops is in June of 2018 with our commitment, and we're in the process of doing the Orion evaluation now to pick a date for Orion.
Thank you. And, you know, some have criticized the SLS and Orion program as kind of a rocket and spacecraft without a mission. We've set a long-term goal of a House-passed NASA Authorization Act of 2014 of sending humans to Mars, and we need a roadmap from NASA of the best way to get there, and it seems to me that now is the time for that. What role do you see SLS and Orion have in reaching that goal, and when will we have a strategy for getting there?
I think both SLS and Orion play a key role in that strategy described. SLS is the heavy lift launch vehicle, is that we need that kind of ability to launch that much mass to go do a Mars-class mission. Orion will have to return at velocities similar to what you saw in the flight test, actually higher from at least lunar return velocities, which most capsules have not. So those two components are really critical to our Mars strategy. There's others that need to be added, a habitation module. And we're actually using Space Station today to buy down risk on the human performance and how well systems work. So I think it was talked about the life support system of Orion. It's actually being tested on Space Station today. So we're actually getting a chance to see how the amine swing bed operations work on board Space Station. So we can use all these pieces to continue to advance us towards Mars. But I don't think there's any question that these two pieces fit squarely in any plan for Mars activity.
So we should just set aside that criticism, right?
Yes.
Thank you.